What's up, nigga?
You're watching Fugitive Red Eye, and today I wanted to talk about my views about the paranormal. I've probably briefly touched on this in other videos before, but I felt that this was deserving of a video of its own, especially since it's October. So I'm gonna be doing this as a random thoughts, just because, you know, they're very loosely structured. Not that my videos are particularly structured anyway, but I want to just make sure I get this out in time before Halloween. Like, granted, I'm gonna upload it the same day I'm recording it, most likely, because that's how I do it, but you know what I mean. So when it comes to the paranormal, I'm the kind of person that thinks that there are definitely things out there that we don't understand, and there are things that cannot be explained through natural causes. I've always been fascinated with things like cryptids, or ghost sightings, or aliens, things like that. More so especially when I was younger, but it is still an interest that has remained to me in some degree as I've gotten older. I've certainly gotten more skeptical as I've gotten older, and I think the vast majority of sightings and things you hear about online are fabricated or misunderstandings or hoaxes. But I mean, obviously I do believe, you know, in religious things too, like I believe in, you know, God and the soul, and, you know, darker shit, you know, like demonic forces and things like that are things I believe. Again, I think with anything there can be people reading too much into things. I am relatively skeptical as well. But I've also gotten to a point where, because so much of the shit that I've been brought up with has been shown to either been false, manipulation and false narratives about history, it's hard to trust people who try and tell you that these things aren't real, because a lot of the shit we were fed in school is bullshit. But there is a lot of things that I do find myself fascinated with, whether it be cryptozoology, whether it be ghost sightings, haunted locations, this kind of thing, that kind of thing. And, you know, I also grew up watching shows like Monster Quest and UFO Files and things like that, and I've always found those fascinating and had kind of an obsession with them. Again, I've been a lot more cynical and skeptical when it comes to as I've gotten older, especially with sightings and stuff that you hear about on YouTube and whatnot. But at the end of the day, if you don't really believe that there's anything more to it, it's just boring, too. Like, there's plenty of things that I don't think are real, but I still get interested in the urban legend aspect or the sort of mythos behind it. There's plenty of things I do think are real, but I'm just saying, like, there's lots of things I'm open to as well, and things that I might not even be open to, but I still find the rumors and legends fascinating about them. I myself have had a handful of experiences that were odd, and plenty of things that I've experienced could be explained, and, you know, there probably are explanations for a lot of these things when people experience them. But there's been times that I've felt, you know, presences and things like that. Like, this kind of thing is pretty natural. I think most people do feel that to some degree. And again, you could argue it's something instinctive, or there's something, like, you know, just in your head, that there might not even be anything real. I don't know, because again, I would never perpetuate to understand these things fully, because again, that's kind of the whole point of it being, you know, supernatural, as it's above natural. Much like with religion, even, and with things like that on a metaphysical and spiritual level, I feel like a lot of these things are inherently speculative, so it's not really something that can be completely understood. But, you know, there's been times when I've been laying in bed and I felt like my leg's been, like, literally, like, pulled on or tugged. Now, you could argue that's just a hypnic jerk waking me up from my sleep, you know, when you kind of jerk yourself in your sleep, that kind of thing. I could totally see that being the case. Again, just because I say I'm open to the idea of supernatural shit doesn't mean I discount the fact that a lot of these things do have rational explanations. But there's been plenty of things that I can't explain. For instance, there was a time we were sitting in my room, me and my brother Danny, and we were talking, and all of a sudden, a cup just jumps off the floor and smacks him in the face. Nobody touched this cup. Nobody was anywhere near this cup. It just fucking happened. It was really weird. I can't explain it, so that tells me that it's not natural. There's been plenty of family members and friends that have told me accounts of things that they've experienced. For instance, Danny, having relatives in Mexico, did tell me, you know, that, like, he's had relatives that have had, like, encounters with, you know, like, La Llorona and stuff like that. And again, Mexico is very superstitious, to be fair. But there's also, like, in his grandma's house, there was, like, a weird, like, woman in white that would just kind of appear in their backyard and stuff like that. There was also a time when my brothers were home and I was at work, and they heard it sound like my TV was on in the other room. They walked past my room, thought it was me in there, and then one of them turned to the other one and said, "Angelo's not home, right?" And he's like, "Yeah, no, he's not." And so then they went, As soon as he went back out in the hall, he heard it, like, turn off, and there was, like, the TV had turned off. And then he went in, there's nobody in there. Like, it was on, they heard it on, and then they heard it turn off when they went to check. Not to mention there was a weird time when my brother turned on the PS3, and the PS3, like, sounded like it said the phrase, kill him over and over again when he turned it on. It was really weird. So there's lots of little things like that. And when we moved into my house that we lived in when I was a kid, the house that I lived in for the longest part of my childhood, my youngest brother, Trevor, there was a room he refused to go in at first. He was terrified of it. He said there was something scary in there, and he was like 3, so he couldn't really define it. So he was trying to, like, figure out a way to articulate what he saw. Anyway, the room he just wouldn't go anywhere near, and so then my mom had to get some people out there to bless the house. And then finally he was able, after they blessed the house, to go in. So I definitely think things like this do happen and are real. I do believe in ghosts. Again, I think the vast majority of things perpetuated online are just, you know, people either making shit up or misunderstanding things or misremembering things. But I've also had, you know, like, my uncle has, like, seen some shit when he's been out camping and heard, like, voices, like, calling his name and shit like that. My other brother, Kyler, has had a lot of, like, weird recurring dreams that he thinks might have some significance. Like, there's a bunch of little things here and there. But this isn't necessarily a story time, per se. I do think it is good to bring some examples in. Like, my high school, for instance, allegedly had a haunted auditorium, too. There was a ghost there, apparently. But the point is, I've always been fascinated by urban legends, cryptids, and, you know, ghosts and things like that, demons. I think demonic forces are absolutely real. I think ghosts are definitely real, too. I just think that a lot of our understanding about these things is definitely skewed. I've seen my own handful of weird UFOs. So, again, I don't have explanations for everything. Again, this is all inherently speculative. And again, I am a lot more skeptical than I used to be. When I was younger, for instance, the thing that scared me the most was actually, you know, supernatural horror and things like that. Obviously, humans are far more scary than any ghouls and ghosts or things that go bump in the night. But I find a lot of these things interesting, and I think people who just completely disregard it, number one, I think are too dismissive. Like I said, I think a lot of what we were told in school was bullshit, and there's all sorts of interesting evidence and things that contradict a lot of official narratives about all sorts of things. And there's rabbit holes that I myself haven't gone down, and there's stuff that's out there that's kind of kooky even to me. But I don't blame people when they go down that kookier shit, because there's so much fucking uncertainty with all the dishonesty we've been brought up with. And number two, like, it's just not fun. Like, things like this, like looking into this and speculating on weird things that might be out there, are fun. They make life more interesting. For instance, Chisu's always sharing some pretty kooky stuff in the Discord. Things about, like, these sightings of these weird creatures called, like, Ningen, which are, like, these humanoid underwater creatures. So, there's, like, a lot of stuff like that. And I don't think that a lot of the stuff Chisu shares is real either, but it's interesting, it's fun, it's fascinating. Though it is fair to say that some of it I do find really interesting and think that there could be some truth to it. I mean, there's also stuff with, like, Nephilim and giants and shit like that I've seen evidence for, and I've heard people tell me about, and, like, there's things that I'm not necessarily willing to completely plunge down that rabbit hole, but it's still interesting, and there's still something there that I'm like, huh, that is kind of odd. So to me, I do believe in the supernatural. I do believe there is something out there, but I think that, again, anything that you're looking into is inherently speculative, and there's always going to be fraudsters. I also find things like Mothman super interesting. I did read the original, like, Mothman Prophecies book, which has a lot of interesting stuff and all the different sightings that people had, and the Men in Black. And, you know, as a conspiracy theorist, too, there's a lot of hand-in-hand with that, right? Paranormal and conspiracy theories are both, you know, things where you're speculating on the nature of things. I mean, there's a difference because conspiracy theories are ones that you can factually prove because, let's face it, the world is run by these clandestine groups who do have these fucking globalist agendas, who are run by particular groups of people. Like, I think at this point everybody knows that a lot of conspiracy theories are actually true. The paranormal is more speculative than that. But it is the same kind of quest for knowledge, as it were, in the brain, I think, when you're looking into both of these things. I always find it interesting, like, when I watch, like, Shrouded Hands videos, like he did about that, tsunami. You know, there was all these sightings of, like, hitchhikers that would disappear, and talk about how they died during the tsunami, or, like, want to be taken to places that no longer exist after the tsunami destroyed them. I think there are both benevolent and malevolent forces out there, and, again, I think that trying to understand them is difficult, and you never will fully understand them. And I know I'm being a little repetitive here, but that's just kind of my thoughts. I love the supernatural. I love that kind of stuff. It's a really fascinating subject, and I do think that there are things out there that we don't understand, and there are plenty of things that happen that are odd and strange. And at the end of the day, I did like to go to, like, haunted places and stuff. I haven't done that in years. But that was always fun. There was always, like, also, like, weird cults and stuff in areas that you hear about. That's not exactly supernatural, but, you know, they themselves are doing some weird ritualistic stuff because they themselves are trying to do supernatural stuff. And hell, we did a whole shit show about cryptids and the supernatural to a degree a while back. You know, how giving the Loch Ness Monster 350 proves that Mothman was a Russian spy. Which is a really funny title for a shit show. But in that, you know, Spencer built a pretty good case, and I agree that the original Rosie Bigfoot footage was actually probably real. And there's a lot of stuff about it that if you actually overanalyze it, looks to be real and doesn't, like, seem human in nature. And there's, like, a lot of little things like that. And I remember I also got my cousin really obsessed with Area 51 when we were younger. Area 51 has always been really fascinating, and there's a lot of weird shit that's definitely happened there. As far as I know, it's actually kind of abandoned now, and they kind of relocated, because I think it's, like, too radioactive or some shit there, because some shit happened down in. But that's a whole other can of worms. And I've heard all sorts of stories from different people. At the end of the day, it's just been an interest of mine, and it's fascinating. Anyway, I'm kind of rambling now, so I'm probably going to go ahead and call it here on the video. This has been Fugitive Red Eye. I hope that you enjoyed. Have a good one. Toodles.
How was that?
We'll get it later.
What are you doing? Subscribe to Fugitive Red Eye.